Well, hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and see what we can get into. Let's do a little bit of the Mothman prophecies and let's go ahead and get into it.
Foremost researcher into the paranormal has traveled extensively to over 40 countries, investigating the unknown for almost 50 years. His voracious curiosity manifested early. He read everything, particularly science, travel, humor, and magic. When 12, he had one of his first brushes with the paranormal, an attic poltergeist that responded to his knocking. We'll ask about that. By the time he was 14, he was running space, writing a column, the Journal, publishing the school paper, and contributing to magazines. Oh my, at 16, I was publishing a science fiction magazine, fanzine actually. The Lunar, I believe it is, and sold a piece to the New Yorker. Wow. In the 1950s, he worked for the Department of the Army as chief of continuity and production for the American Forces Network, AFN in Frankfurt. That's Germany. In 1952, wrote and produced the radio program Things in the Sky about unidentified flying objects that's heard by millions throughout Europe. Author now of 30 books since Jadu, I guess, his 1957 autobiography. Hill's groundbreaking books have been published in over 20 countries and include many of ufology's most acclaimed titles: Operation Trojan Horse, Our Haunted Planet, and the Mothman Prophecies. Incredible Mothman investigations are the subject of a major motion picture starring a Keel-inspired character played by Richard Gere, all slated to be released on January 25th. That, in most time zones, would be today. He has written articles that have appeared in many leading periodicals, including Playboy, Saga, Fate. His monthly Beyond the Known column is a popular Fate feature. John was recently the subject of Secrets of the Shadow World. Oh my, what a title. A feature-length documentary acclaimed by a contractor, George Kukar, who premiered at Lincoln Center, New York City. His extensive television appearances include Johnny Carson, Jack Palmer, Hugh Jones, Steve Letterman. Wow. He's been around. John, hi, welcome to the bunker. I've for many, many years. And how have we never before this moment connected? I don't know. I've listened to you for a very long time. Never happened before. It's just illogical. I know many of the people who are on the show. Yeah, it's illogical that we haven't connected before. Lauren Coleman called through, actually, just before you did go on the air. That wasn't planned thing. He just got through. And I admitted to him, and I'm going to admit the same thing to you. All of these years that I've done the paranormal and things about the paranormal, I've traveled a lot of different paths, but the only thing I've known about Mothman was an occasional caller who would reference Mothman, and I'd always say, well, I don't know a lot about it, and your name would come up, and so anyway, here we are finally. What is Mothman? Oh, 35 years ago. So that's, in terms of generations, that's like 3 generations and like unintended, easy to forget it. Mothman appeared in West Virginia in 1966, and there were frequent appearances of this creature, which was described as being about 7 or 8 feet tall, which is pretty big, and had very bright red eyes. And it would spread wings that were about 10 feet across, and it would take off straight up in the air. And it had a curious habit of chasing automobiles. Straight up in the air. Now it didn't like a helicopter, right? It did. Most of the birds have to do a running start. Yeah, sure. Superman leap. Yeah. And anyone who saw this was usually horrified and terrified and traumatized by it. And I, over a period period of a year, I collected over 100 reports from people who seemed very sincere and very, very frightened by what had happened to them. This thing had sort of hypnotic powers. People would be transfixed when they saw it. And then the year climax with the collapse of a bridge. A lot of people on it.
What did that have to do with Mothman?
Well, it seemed to bring things to not to a stop, but everything slowed down. There are a lot of people on the bridge who had either encountered the Mothman or had close relatives who had encountered the Mothman.
This was geographically held to how small an area?
To it's the Ohio Valley, the Ohio River. You know, it's the border between Ohio and West Virginia.
Right.
And a little town called Point Pleasant was right there where the bridge was. And it was a town of about 6,000 people.
And so the sightings were confined to this town or to an area around the town or what?
To a large part of West Virginia.
Oh.
And there were sightings in Ohio, too. And there were curious sightings of what really looked like a really large bird, like, say, an ancient pterodactyl or something. So, meanwhile, the people in this town and all around it were having all kinds of paranormal manifestations, poltergeist activity. And that I happened to be there almost by accident. I had gone to Beckley, West Virginia, which is sort of a mining town then. I don't know what it is now.
What had taken you there? Why were you going
Because there was a boy there who had found a cat with wings.
A cat with wings?
Yes. And this cat he named it Thomas, and it became a celebrity. And he charged 10 cents to look at this cat. So all of the people in the area were paying 10 cents to take a look at this winged cat.
Well, I'd sure pay 10 cents.
Yeah. Well, I went there. I did a story for a magazine. I think it was a magazine called Coronet. You probably don't remember that.
I do remember that.
There were many general magazines at that time. Now there are very few general magazines. They're all specialized. But I was a freelance writer writing for all of these magazines. And I went there to track down the whole story on Thomas the winged cat. His wings fell off.
They fell off?
Yeah, they were like lumps of gristle or something.
So they were...
And that ruined the kid's business.
Yeah, I'm sure that was the end of the 10 cents.
There was a lot more to the story. A woman in the neighborhood claimed that Thomas was her cat. And then when the wings fell off, she lost interest in it. She took the boy to court before the wings fell off.
The court case died on the violence.
So there was quite a story there. And while I was in Beckley, I was having lunch with the editor of the newspaper in Beckley.
Right.
And the story came over the wire that 4 young people had seen this tall winged creature in Point Pleasant, outside of Point Pleasant, in an area that was known as the TNT area.
Before we even get any further, can I ask you, how does one get a job doing what you did, being able to say, listen, editor, I'm on a plane for this winged cat. How do you get a job where you get to do those kind of stories?
I collected many other stories on each of these trips. And Playboy magazine had asked me to get to the bottom of the flying saucer mystery. At that time, there were flying saucer stories from all over the world, not just from Michigan or, localized stories. People were seeing them everywhere, and they were seeing them in the Ohio Valley.
Well, gee whiz, John, we're still seeing them in the Ohio Valley, and we still don't know what they are. So I take it you disappointed Mr. Hefner and couldn't get to the bottom.
I did not succeed in solving the mystery, but I traveled extensively around the United States, and I saw many of these things myself.
I'm sorry the cat's wings fell off. That would have been very cool to have a winged cat.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting story, and it's in one of my books. Right now, offhand, I couldn't tell you which book. Anyway, I went to Point Pleasant, expecting to stay there for a few hours, interviewing these people. And I discovered that there were all sorts of things happening there. They were seeing UFOs. When I say UFOs, these were very, very bright lights. And they were going up and down the river. Everybody was seeing them, and nobody knew what they were. And very often they would be very, very low in the sky. You could be like 100 feet above the water.
And in size, how big?
Well, they were mostly the size of a large beach ball. And extremely bright, and they would change colors sometimes. Just what we're hearing today, the same kind of thing.
Well, today, though, there's some recent, really interesting scientific literature about plasma balls. Now, these plasma balls apparently defy conventional physics in that they are able to maintain the energy that generates them, and in fact, even increase it while standing in the atmosphere. And so that's all I know, but I know that science has determined that, and they don't understand how it can be.
Well, they were talking about that in the 60s, the plasma ball.
Really?
And, you could say nothing is new. Everything that people are saying today, they were saying.
So it's been around?
Yes, and the history of this goes way back.
But actually being able to measure one, that is new. And being able to see it defy conventional physics, nothing after creation continues to get stronger. It gets weaker after creation, whatever would make this plasma ball. So it defies physics. That part's new.
Well, these things seem to have a basic intelligence to them. If you flash a flashlight at them, they jump out of the way of the beam.
I've heard those stories, yes.
And outside, I would flash, say, 3 times, and they would flash back 3 times. Oh, I did this in front of witnesses who signed affidavits to that. And I was totally baffled by this, because there were so many of them. And night after night, we would see them. And I was also, of course, I was hoping to catch the bird, as people called it.
Yes.
And
what did you think these, obviously you had to have done a lot of speculation about what these apparent intelligent balls of light were.
Well, they had to be some form of energy. Because people who got close to them would suffer very severe burns on their bodies. Often the eyes would be the first to be affected. It was like conjunctivitis. And that happened to me once. It was like getting sand in your eyes, and it lasted for several days.
Oh my.
Then there were 3 cases during that period, not in West Virginia, but elsewhere, of people who were permanently blinded by looking at these things.
Do you believe that it was just the brightness of the object? They tell you all the time, don't look at the sun, you could lose your sight. Or do you think it was some form of radiation or what?
Well, during that period, between 1964 and 1968, we had this enormous UFO wave all over the world. And a lot of people were suffering various kinds of physical ailments after seeing these things.
Right.
Some of them would, it was like their insides were burned or something. Their urine turned black.
As though they were cooked. Maybe even microwave. Huh?
That would be microwaves, yes. And animals were very afraid of these things. Most dogs and cows and horses and things would act terrified by them.
Well, they've got developed instincts.
They probably heard sounds, too, that we couldn't hear.
Right. They would instinctually, the way animals understand fire instinctually, they would understand this, I would think. Yes. Anything with that kind of energy, sure.
So
we're not that bright, probably. We go, what's that? Wow.
Well, when you consider the universe, we're sort of like ants. We can construct things and do things and destroy our environment. But I don't think we're very important in the universal scheme of things.
Or at least not as important as we think we are.
Yeah. Well, that's another problem. Man's ego is always getting in our way. These sightings, as I say, I saw so many of them and signaled to them. And, other people were with me when I was saying these things. It was a very interesting period of history, which is now almost completely forgotten. There's a new generations coming up, who think it's new to them. They see these things and think it's all brand new.
By the way, I want to sell something. My producers said they thought you were 80 years old.
I'm 72.
You're 72. So Lauren Coleman said you were 72, and he's exactly right then. You're 72. You know, I mean, America can barely remember what happened 2 weeks ago about a lot of things. And so remembering what happened that long ago, no way. But there's no doubt about it. You were there. It happened.
Yes, there's many other places. It was happening in Long Island, in New York State.
Really?
And there were many sightings. We could see them coming in from the ocean. It was like watching, it looked like the tips of red hot pokers. And they would come in from the ocean and fly over Long Island. These were larger objects than light. We don't know what they were, but they were obviously radiating infrared or something. And over the years, I've seen a number of those. And they occasionally also have a habit of chasing automobiles.
Do you think there's a relationship between those and the lights we talked about?
I think they're all interrelated. How, I don't know. I sort of discarded the theory that they were from outer space because there's so many of them, and it goes back so far. The history goes back so far.
The one distinctive thing about Mothman seems to be the description of blood-red eyes, right?
Right. That's a description also of Bigfoot very often, you know.
Yeah, you know how some people hate snakes and some people are scared of spiders.
Right.
I'm scared of things with red eyes. I don't like red eyes. And somebody earlier was saying, well, you know, a lot of people have described things like Mothman as angels. I said earlier, I'll say it again, angels definitely don't have red eyes. Not in my world, anyway. Hold on. Stay right exactly where you are, John. Well, it certainly cannot be a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences like this. That John Taylor's on the program tonight, and the movie just happens to be being released today.
Accounting?
No, accounting. No, they've probably been busting around going into yes, sucking your butt dry, right? Right until the release date.
They've been interviewed by newspapers from all over the country and done a number of TV shows. And
newspapers are not as much fun. They always get stuff wrong.
That's guaranteed.
I mean, it absolutely is guaranteed. At least when you're on radio, these are your words, you know? They're not going to change.
Right.
The Mothman prophecies, why the word prophecies?
Because I started, when I was chasing these things, I started getting a lot of mysterious phone calls. And this was, you know, today we have satellites up there that can interfere with any telephone on Earth. Like, in those days, we didn't have those satellites. I couldn't really blame the government for these phone calls were usually very mechanical voices, like you get today from a computer. We didn't have real PCs in those days either. Right. And they predicted a number of things that came true right on the nose. Like what? Martin Luther King.
His assassination.
Yes, they told me that he would be shot in the throat. And I took it so seriously, I spent some desperate days trying to contact this group, and I failed. Later I learned that many other people had also gotten this prediction one way or another, and had tried to contact. I think that's, you know, his last speech was, "I've been to the mountaintops," and it was almost a farewell speech. Right? He must have been aware of all this. There were predictions that the Pope was going to be assassinated. And there was an incident where a man dressed as a priest attacked the Pope with a black knife. Fortunately, the Pope's guard subdued this man, but it was a real attempt. There were a lot of predictions, which are some of my posts outlined in full.
Was this coming, John, at Point Pleasant, or following Point Pleasant, or what?
This would usually be when I was back in my New York apartment. I get these crazy phone calls.
Do you think that it had something to do with Point Pleasant?
It was all interconnected because I was going back and forth to Point Pleasant frequently. And now that's almost 1,000 miles from New York. But as soon as I would get back from Point Pleasant, I'd have a string of messages of frantic things were happening again in Point Pleasant. So I'd have to jump in my car and go back. And one of these predictions sort of built up over a period of time was that there was going to be a terrible accident on the river, the Ohio River. And that a lot of people were going to be killed. And because the other predictions had come true, I was getting rather frantic about this because I didn't know precisely what was going to happen. There were chemical factories along the river, and I was afraid that one of them was going to blow up. And of course, I couldn't tell the people there. If it didn't happen, I'd look like a fool. And if it did happen, it's even worse.
Then you'd be implicated or something.
Well, I would have started a lot of rumors. That's what would have happened.
Now, if you successfully predicted a chemical plant blowing up, believe me, you'd be a suspect.
Oh yeah, because the FBI and the CIA were around there at that time. I found out later a lot more than I should have known. The TNT area.
Oh, now that's interesting. So in other words, our own government, our spook side government, knew something was going on there as well. I wanted to know what it was.
Because there were certainly a lot of strangers, and as you know, especially in the 60s, the FBI dressed almost in a uniform. They had very short hair. They always wore a hat. And they dressed with neckties and things that you didn't see in Point Pleasant very often. And
so an FBI agent would tend to stick out like a sore thumb.
Right. Well, that was their problem all over the country. Now I think they grow beards and they dress shabby clothes and so on. But in those days, they had to follow that dress code.
Well, I'll tell you something, John. The FBI guys that I've seen still look FBI all the way. I got a few visit, and they're really classic guys. Yeah, it's almost like a machine turns around somewhere. Yeah, I guess, well, it does sort of. I guess that, as you point out, that they've got a lot of undercover people and so forth now these days. But yeah, you're right. And those just about all of that way. And so, they'd be recognizable and with presence. So you think our government had a big interest in whatever was happening there?
Well, there was a lady who lived near the bridge. And she claimed that she saw 2 days before the disaster, she saw 2 men wearing low-cut shoes, Oxford, well-shined, and plaid jackets, climbing around the bridge. She never seen anybody except workmen climbing on that bridge. And these guys, she couldn't identify them, but they weren't wearing FBI black jackets.
Right. So the obvious suspicion is they did something that might have weakened the bridge, or I don't know.
Yeah, you could really speculate on that, and that it didn't make any sense to her at the time. Especially, this is an area where men wore boots all the time. It was wintertime, and a lot of slush and snow. It was not proper dress to be climbing around a bridge.
Right. What would be, if you were to speculate, what would be the motive for doing that? Why bring the bridge down? What do you affect when you do that? What's the idea?
Well, there's another thing that happened when the bridge fell. There was a stoplight at either end of the bridge, and they were stuck on red. So the traffic on the bridge was not moving. It was cluttered traffic. And these stoplights were not working.
So in other words, the entire bridge was covered with traffic?
Yeah, a little Christmas traffic. It was December 15th.
Right.
And it was the rush hour. And in those days, they had a rush hour. I don't think they have one anymore. But there were a lot of things that just didn't make sense. This kind of bridge normally wouldn't fall into the water. It was right. So that was just one part of the whole story.
Were many killed?
Yes, about 47 people.
47 people.
It made headlines all over the world.
Why do you think? Well, of course, I guess it was prophesied. So,
well, they didn't say the bridge was going to collapse,
but a tragedy.
Every time I went to Point Pleasant, I heard a gas mask.
Why?
Well, I was thinking of the chemical factory.
Oh, I see.
And of course, I didn't want to start any kind of rumors or panics or anything, so I kept my mouth shut, except I wrote to a few people. At that time I was corresponding with Dr. Jacques Vallée.
Oh, yes, of course.
And he mentions it in one of his books. And I sent him a letter predicting that something was going to happen on the river, the Ohio River. He probably thought I was nuts.
So, Mothman then might have been, by imparting prophecies with his presence, or its presence, whatever it was, or is, it might have been trying to warn people that danger, disaster, something horrible was about to happen.
Yes. And people in Point Pleasant started having very strange dreams. Mary Heyer, who was a newspaper reporter, dreamt that there were Christmas packages floating in the river. And the dream really disturbed her. But she couldn't interpret it. Other people were getting the same kind of dream. That something terrible was going to happen in the town. And I was caught in the middle of all of this. And there was nothing I could do, really.
John, wouldn't there be another way of looking at it, though? That was a half full glass of water. The half empty is that Mothman caused this.
Well, he either caused it or he was trying to convey information to us in a strange way. And, I've given it a lot of thought over the years. My book covers that whole period in detail. I kept careful notes, and I knew if there was something bizarre going on, and I didn't know what it was.
John, I've got to tell you about something. Earlier tonight, and I'm going to have Keith put this up for me on my website as soon as we can do it. There was a picture of a street just about where the 9/11 disaster occurred. Somebody who took a photograph of John. Maybe you've even seen it. Maybe somebody sent it to you. I don't know. Of this bird just having passed, it looks like a building. And it looks like a gigantic pterodactyl. It's the daggondest picture I've ever seen, John.
I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that? Do you have a computer?
I have, but my electronics are not working very well here.
Okay. Well, Keith, if you have that photo and you can get it up, would you please put it up? I've been puzzling about this since I saw this photograph.
This was before the buildings one time?
Actually, it was just after. You can see the dust rising and stuff. And here's this giant, people have said, well, the bird is closer to the camera than you think, but it doesn't look that way to me. It looks like a prehistoric, gigantic bird, and I think it's a real photograph, and I wish I had a computer site to let you look at it. But it's got a prehistoric look to it. There's absolutely no question about it in my mind, and I wonder.
Well, we all wonder, is there anything close to it that you can compare the sizes with, or?
Well, let's put it this way. If this creature is where it looks to be with respect to the building, it would have to be like 100 feet long. It's hard to even estimate. I don't know. It's what a true prehistoric bird looks like. Birds are still kind of prehistoric. The ones we have out here in the desert, when you look at them, they look prehistoric, John. Birds are very old. They're the relatives to the dinosaurs, right?
Well, that's very strange. In 1975, a group of school teachers driving in Texas, and they saw what they thought was pterodactyl. They really thought it was a pterodactyl,
right?
And this was investigated by Jerry Clark, I think. I don't know if you know him. And there are no pterodactyls in Texas as far as we know.
I know there are people out investigating, actually going out into the field looking for pterodactyls now.
Are they?
Yes, there are. There are safaris down to South America and Central America looking for these things. So a lot of people believe they're still around, and they might be.
Well, if they were, they would have to eat a lot, and we would find evidence of that. Of course, we do have the animal mutilations that have been going on for years. And,
a lot of them going on right now in Montana, right now.
I think Linda is probably there.
Linda probably is there, and I know that other investigatory agencies that come to this program are also there. There's a lot of people investigating this right now. I have no answer for them, do you?
Well, some years ago, a group of farmers in the western states held a class action against the government, claiming the government was doing that. And I think they won the case. There was a book published of the transcripts of the trial and everything. It's called Atomic Holocaust. I can't remember the name of the author. He was a reputable newspaper.
Really?
And this, you've probably heard about this in the news media. But I did accidentally find a copy of the book, which I have buried there somewhere in my other books. I remember reading it carefully. And they the radiation collects around the anus of the animals. And they found that a lot of these animals, they apparently had a real case against the government.
The only problem I ever had with that was, our government wouldn't have a hard time getting their hands on cows if they needed them. They should have their own ranch, at the very least, right? So why would they need various poor farmers' cattle? That part just never made sense.
Maybe it was some kind of an accident, and these animals were involved in it. I don't know if you remember that time. There was a case where a lot of sheep were killed.
I do remember that. Yes,
that was a government mistake.
It was, yes, it certainly was. So, yes, it happens once. I guess if you have to twice or three times. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, we have enough trouble with all these other things without chasing the government, chasing animals. Everything is so weird and so interconnected in all this.
Well, a lot of people have speculated that they need animals that have been exposed in certain areas, in specific areas. They have to take samples or something in certain areas. A lot of people think it may be speculated about some sort of environmental test that's going on because changes jump very quickly in cows, I guess.
Why wouldn't they come out in the open? Go to the farmer and say, listen, we've got a problem. Look at your animals.
Well,
why do it in the middle of the night?
Well, because people like John Keel would write big stories about it.
That's true.
And we would find out we had a big environmental problem that they didn't really apparently want to discuss. So they might not go up to the market.
We know we have a big environmental problem on all levels. Water, air.
Well, we sort of know it. A lot of it, not enough of the right people know it. Tonight, in the first hour, John, I was showing a picture of the Antarctic, where there ought to be ice. There's water.
Yes, it's melting. And that's pretty scary. As you know, what will happen is the ice caps melt.
Nothing good.
When we have the problem of the superstorms and all that, the weather is really undergoing a strange change.
You've noticed.
Yeah, everybody has noticed. You haven't got it.
John, I sure wish you had a handy computer because we sure got that photograph up here right now, and I think if you saw it, it would give you chills. If you can make it to the computer in the next couple of days, after you probably slept for 2-3 days after doing all of these interviews, you will eventually get to it. Go up and take a look.
That's fascinating. These are real photographs for the real camera, not digital or...
Well, I don't know. It's either a digital camera or it's a regular camera scanned photograph. I don't know which, but it's a very clear photograph. Very clear. Now, these whatever. There's the next question for you. How do you? I understand you have a theory about windows. I was about to say, how did these things get here? But I was told that you have a theory about windows, things that open temporarily, occasionally. In certain places, in certain conditions, certain windows that open to a different place, something like that.
It seems these paranormal manifestations cluster around certain areas century after century. And, for example, not far from Point Pleasant is Moundsville. And that's where all of the Indian mounds are, which are shaped like snakes and elephants. And you don't know about Indian mounds?
No, sir.
Indian mounds are very interesting. We say they're Indian mounds, but they may have been done, thousands of years ago by somebody else. And this particular area of West Virginia has had a succession of mysterious events. Flatwoods, West Virginia, is not far from Point Pleasant, and they had a monster sighting there in 1952. And then a little further up the river is a town called Sistersville. And in 1896, the whole community was awakened by a very bright light, which came out of the sky. And they never had a logical answer for it. Because if it had been a meteor, it would have hit somewhere and might have started fires. It was that low, very bright. And I talked to one man, an elderly man there, who sort of remembered it, but he was a child at the time that it happened. And Eventually, the people there, I think, tried to say that it was some kind of astronomical phenomenon, but it was a rare. Sistersville is still a tiny little town there. But all up and down the Ohio Valley, we've had a long succession of these strange things.
What would you say was the most recent sighting you've heard of a Mothman?
A Mothman?
Yes.
I think there was a young man in Pennsylvania who saw a giant bird just a few months ago. He was 19 years old, and he reported it to a local 14, a man named Stan Gordon, and that's how we heard about it. There was a sighting in South Dakota last summer. This giant bird was roosting on a tree for a long time because a lot of people saw it. It was larger than anything I'd ever seen before. When it flew away. But we do get these reports. And Lauren Coleman tries to keep track of them more than I do.
I know he does, yes. I've had him on the show. Before you were. That is a coincidence. Anyway, so then this creature may well still be around. And may visit the area where either like this death or what happened.
That's very possible. If this is all related to psychic phenomena. I looked all over West Virginia for signs of physical signs, like a bird got knocked, that we could look at the spoor and all kinds of traces. That I would need a large nest or a cave. Gigantic eggs, right? And there was no trace of anything in this area. The bird also thought that had a habit of disappearing suddenly. People would see it. That's, of course, also true of these bright lights.
Yes. So that brings us right back to have these areas that seem to, I don't know, for a time something isn't done, it's open.
Well, the scientists are working on all kinds of theories about other dimensions. They sure are. And they're getting closer all the time to some kind of spectacular explanation of the universe. They're just finally recognizing that most of the universe is made up of dark matter. It doesn't reflect light. And the stars that we see are only a tiny portion of the real universe, whatever it is.
That is correct. That's exactly what they're saying. And, it's going to really eventually turn everything upside down on its ear about what we believe and what was called science fiction and just legend and myth. It may all come from somewhere else. Yeah, of course, the scientists have to fight among themselves. That's part of the process. They're doing lots of that. So maybe a lot of what you saw then. What were you thinking then? Then the scientists weren't saying things like other dimensions were pure science fiction. Then. So,
well, I was thinking a lot of things. I was totally baffled by all this. And it was very unsettling because I couldn't talk about it much with other people. Certainly not with people in West Virginia. I could not discuss these things. And I was aware that these things were always clustering around certain areas, generation after generation. And if somebody named Jones saw something in 1896, somebody named Jones would see it in 1910, in the same area, and so on. It seemed like there was nothing these things kept recurring. And of course, the historical records were very vague. And newspapers of the period were known for their hoaxes. Difficult research. Today, many of the newspapers in small towns are gone. We're not getting any records at all. Right.
Wouldn't it, being West Virginia, the Bible Belt there, wouldn't a lot of people who saw these things probably regard them as evil entities of some sort?
Yes, there was a lot of that. We had a rash of black cases, which seemed to be, these men would arrive and black color, they looked. Well, they had angular features and a very dusky skin, sort of like. I would carry pictures around with me of different racial groups, and they were always Laplanders.
Laplanders.
That didn't make any sense at all. But that was what people thought these men were like. Then we had would drive up and photograph somebody's house and ask to photograph the children. This is going on in recent years in England. They call them phantom social workers. They're very
That's
spooky.
That is really spooky. That's really spooky. You have to guess about what they were.
There again, I don't know. I put out the word to all the police up and down the Ohio Valley to watch out for these guys. Sometimes I would miss my contacts, and they would disappear somewhere. And actually, this goes up into the Men in Black lore, and they finally made a comedy out of it. Movie, Men in Black movie coming up this year.
It's not all comedy, though, believe me.
No, I first one to agree with that. Something is very strange going on out there. For example, I was talking to a woman on the phone one day that I met in West Virginia, and she said, by the way, as I told your secretary the other day, hey, wait, I don't have a secretary, right? And this woman had been going to people that I had interviewed, and she was re-interviewing, telling them that she was my secretary.
Really?
And it was an attractive blonde woman. She was blonde hair and carrying a clipboard and looking very secretarial.
Gee, John, somebody was really interested in your work.
Well,
Really interested.
That was part of the growing paranoia in that period. Of course, I give in detail in the book and the movie and all. It was very attractive period.
Why do you think they decided to make this big motion picture? And by the way, have you seen it? Yeah, you have.
And I liked it.
And you liked it?
Yeah. They of course couldn't do the exact ones in the book, but they did a lot of the things in the book, and they captured the mood of the book and the atmosphere. Did a very good job with the production, obviously. And I think it's going to cause a sensation. For example, there was one thing I told you, I had all these problems with the telephone. Right. And at one time, I got disgusted with the telephone. I got the phone rang. How can you explain that?
You not. Unless there is a separate device inside the telephone that has been there for quite a while.
Well, I was going around taking telephones apart. In those days, with the phones, you could easily open them up. Oh yeah. With modern phones, you need special tools. That little incident is in the movie, and many of the encountered those things are in the movie.
Pretty well represented, and obviously, of course, Hollywood always takes a little bit here or there, and will change something here or there, but as a general rule, it follows pretty much what you wrote, but there's enough of what you wrote to
keep you from having the usual author's skip. Not most authors scream and tear their hair when they see the movie in the book. And the director did a fine job. Not really, because I was undergoing some eye problems and I couldn't go. They shot it in Pennsylvania, and I was supposed to go out there and take a cameo part. But I had medical problems and I couldn't go. And movie sitting on a park bench or something.
I'm sorry. I would have been fun though.
They shot the film in a place called Tommy, which is outside of Pittsburgh. And it was a town that looked pretty much like Pleasant.
Now, I wonder, John, and I bet you wonder too, after this movie comes out, if it's a gigantic hit, I wonder what will happen to the number of reports, sightings of Mothman.
I'm willing to bet that. You certainly know this is also very contagious. If somebody sees a Bigfoot going through his garbage can, reports it. Very soon, everybody in the neighborhood sees somebody going through their garbage can.
And there's a couple of ways of looking at that, right there. In other words, I'm not even beyond thinking that these things, whatever they are, might even come from us, inside of us, the id.
Well, that was one of the things that I was afraid of, but wherever I went, I might have been causing this. And there you are. Oh, when I had to go back in my level state at that time.
Well, in that case, John, think what you're about to cause with the release of this motion picture. Maybe.
I worry about it.
Hold on, we're at the bottom of the hour here. We'll find out what you worry about in a second. I'm like, no, this is coast to coast. Well, I can now easily see how this is going to make a really good motion picture. It's going to and I'm kind of curious. Of course, Richard Gere is in the movie, but plays.
Well, there's also Alan Bates, the English actor. He does a little cameo. Very good. He plays an eccentric scientist. I think the Gere character, this character, is sort of a component of me, of you. Yeah, sort of. I like the young things very much because he talks just like I talk. And I've never met Alan Bates.
You did tell me originally that you went down there to look for this winged cat. And so, were you doing kinds of stories then?
Oh, yes. I was traveling all over and doing stories about everything I found. Well, that and human interest stories. And God say, there's a big market for human interest stories. Sometimes I would stay up all night and sleep all day because I was sitting in a graveyard or something. We're seeing these lakes and graveyards. That's an old
current phenomenon too. It's current phenomenon. Yes, it is. And I have a group that comes off the program, do electronic voice phenomena, and I'm sure you've heard of that. And you can hear these voices that they seem to harvest well in graveyards,
They've been doing that for several years now, recording the voices. They also, radio places in Europe have been able to get pictures of the dead on television.
No, John, I haven't heard about that.
Well, it's never gotten much publicity in the United States, but it was a sensation in Europe.
Tell me about it.
Range mirrors around the TV screen. Everything is adjusted properly. Images of dead people appear on the screen, not recognizable. This was on for some years in Europe, but I think it's just quieted down.
I've never heard of it. You reported on that. Have you seen any of these images?
No, I haven't. A lot of people have. They think Radio Luxembourg got involved in this somehow. They were doing it a lot over there. It's just one strange. I think the business of voices starts with a blind man in England. I think a blind man had a tape recorder. And first everybody thought somebody was going away. They were whispering out through the window or something.
Yes.
But it turned out many people
These people tonight are on use a lot of careful controls. They use only random tapes. Recorded on the tape. Right. And what they capture really is totally freaky. I mean, it really is freaky. They go to radio. I wouldn't do that. You did it, though, huh?
Because I've been interested for 30 years, and I've been the tombstones are times over. It sounds like, not very much anyway. But the early tombstones were made to stay erect forever. They had steel rods through their basement. Right? In order to not want to be older, you almost need a machine because they bend the rods inside the breaks off. And often, right here in New York City, we have occasions where the police will come up to a graveyard or around the graveyard, and then they come back 2 hours later, and 200 stones will be back. Unless you have a tractor and a lot of chains and things, you're not going to be able to do that. So one thing to think teenagers before it gets on. They're not that interested in hard work.
200. So you sat in a graveyard trying to see this phenomenon occur.
I'm trying to figure it out. It never happens when you're there. You leave the graveyard for 2 hours and you come back and things are not over.
That happened to you?
Yeah. And it doesn't just happen in one city. It happens all over the country. And I understand they've had a rash of this in their friends.
Any ideas?
I have no idea. It seems to me that they would need machinery to do it, and that would leave a lot of tracks. No tracks.
Same problem with the crop circles. They never find any tracks.
That's true.
Even deep, absolutely be tracks. They don't find tracks. Very possible.
Well, some years ago, that was a big happen in England. And I was over there to take a train over the countryside. And just in the middle of nowhere. And nobody was paying any attention to it.
Do you think that there are just these areas where these things happen? Because these very crop circles, I think, become, by the way, every year, including this last, more complex and more interesting and harder to figure out. Do you think there are just areas like Great Britain that where these particular things or this phenomenon manifests itself?
Well, I think if you had the money to do it, you could examine this worldwide and see if these circles follow the pattern around the world, because they turn up in every country here.
Oh yes, I'm aware.
If we could map it out, they never found it with maps. Or on the map, if we could follow the path around the world, we might find this something like a satellite.
They're finding them, John, in ice and snow and even in dirt and grass. In areas where you have to look a little more carefully because it's not as obvious when it knocks down the meat. It's very obvious, but it's very all over.
Well, I've examined them. I mean, you can't figure out what would do that. Of course, there were a lot of hoaxes too. At one point, college kids were trying to out-hoax each other. It's pretty obvious that they used a stake in the middle of it and a string or a rope and walked around in a circle.
Yes, and those are obvious and they're easily detectable. But then a lot of them are not. And you have to really do the same thing you did all the time. You separate hoaxes. Or did you
Well, I would find a lot of hoaxes. There are a lot of hoaxes where people claim to see something just for the hell of it. Guys, just having fun. But we do have a lot of mysteries that I got involved in. There was mysterious holes in the ground that appeared. And these are very deep holes. Yes. You
I know something about holes, yes.
Yeah. And that's something. Because I wake up in the morning, there'll be this huge hole in this field. And no idea of how it got there. What caused it?
Well, I have done some stories. In fact, next week I'm going to do another on an apparent bottomless hole. Truly, a hole without a bottom.
Really?
Yes.
Well, we probably don't want to say where it is.
Well, it is. It was discovered. We discovered one in Ellensburg, near Ellensburg, Washington.
I remember that one.
It was called Bell's Hole, and
did it get crushed?
I believe it. He's found another hole, and you're telling me you heard about holes that just suddenly appeared?
Right. Wow. I remember there was one in Switzerland. And,
No, not with holes. They're usually there or not. I suppose there could be some sort of geologic movement, and suddenly a hole might be. But aside from that,
an underground haven or something.
has anybody ever attempted to explore any of these holes?
Oh, sure, there. People could try to get down with ropes and things and pick them up. Some of these are very, very deep.
That's exactly right. They literally give up. It's so deep. And do these holes actually named for scientific study, or is it your experience something else happened?
Well, I just related. I'm a castle and or whoever owns the property. And scientists aren't interested in that because they're afraid of the unknown. They want to be able to explain it. Whatever happens, there are ice caves all over. These are just holes in the ground filled with ice. They're only, 10 feet down. Nobody knows how life's so cold in the air. We have all kinds of scientific anomalies, and very few scientists allow
Well, there's really a good reason for that. And that is because they're all subject to peer pressure, and they're all subject to grant money needs. And when you go and you start investigating the parents' bottomless holes, things like that, you get in trouble. They're also afraid for their reputation. That's what I mean by trouble. Yeah. That's a some, the scientific times decided for the scientific mind. This is really interesting. I'm going to look into this, but we just don't get a lot of that, do we? I think more with astrophysics than with anything else. People were speculating particles, they're more daring than most scientists. They're kind of on the limb here. Project their theories. Yes, you're quite right. There are some out there on the edge, no doubt about it, but the great majority of them seem to live in some sort of small, fearful world that I don't fully understand. My concept of science. Have you had a lot to do? In other words, as you investigate some of these really anomalous things, have you approached scientists? I mean, obviously, most of the credibility of anything you might write, you would think you'd want to have somebody of science involved in some way. Well, it's not that easy. With the Mothman thing, I was trying to find something that a scientist could look at. And it was very odd. It looked like giant dog footprints. I couldn't get the local university in Virginia and do anything about it. Really. These were very strange footprints. They were very, very large. This was a dog. Also, on one occasion, I found snow next to a road. I found one single human footprint. One single footprint without shoes. Human foot. Oh no. I had no explanation for that. If somebody was walking around barefoot in the snow, I would have found other footprints. But not one. Not one. Maybe it's a giant pterodactyl at the end of the mouth, and it's landing for a moment. It's not one footprint. So otherwise, I can't imagine our footprint anywhere. One of the many little problems that you run across. Anyway, toward the end of the last break, we were talking about responsibility, and that when you get publicity about this kind of thing, and you put it in people's minds, inevitably you are going to cause a lot of excitement and a lot of people to see the things this movie is going to bring first to the screen and then eventually to their TV screens, and they're going to start seeing this thing. No question about it. I imagine they will. And I fear for the people in West Virginia because they're going to be inundated with tourists. They're not prepared for it. There's going to be first a trickle of tourists, and then maybe by the end of the summer it'll be Coney Island. Quite pleasant. Oh, brother. Nothing much I can do about that. Do they know this is? Do they suspect their device? I've tried to tell them now it's time to build hamburgers and next door. Their economy is not very good there. Everything's Roswell. Oh yeah, open museums. Oh yes. I'm very well aware. Very well aware. And so that picture here, this would be something. From the big cities like Los Angeles. Nationwide.
nationwide all over. Wow. Hundreds and hundreds of troops out there. You must have, yes. And serious another gigantic coincidence. It's unbelievable. Listen, I know bleeding you dry, John, but I have 1 hour left, and I would like to take this moment to ask you, John, all my guests at this point have the choice to give it good or bad. If you're tired, because I know you're on the East Coast, I see it's almost 4 o'clock in the morning. Or if you want to stick around for 1 hour, answer questions to the audience. I know they'd love to talk to you, but it's your choice. I'll stay with it. Will you really? So, I think I can hold up here. Well, I'm not you want to give it a try? Yeah, let's give it a try. All right, I know a lot of people like to speak to you, so stay right where you are, John. Back down to John A. just before we go to the phones. John, thinking back on everything that happened and how it happened. What happened? How has all of this affected your life? How has it changed your life? Something like this cannot occur without inducing a major change. It's changed much like that. And after the tragedy of the bridge, it was, to me, it was similar to the World Trade Center. I was in shock for 6 months. I'm very, I couldn't even think about stuff in West Virginia for a very long time. I finally wrote the book almost 10 years after. It's very cathartic, isn't it, to write a book like that? Yeah, and unfortunately I had made careful notes on I had a vast collection of information that I might have forgotten what it was. It's safe. And now with the movie, it's really safe. Yeah, it's who knows what'll happen next? Hard to tell. Well, I have some theories about that, John. I think the shows that you talked about, yeah, I think there are more of them lately, and they're more frequent, and things are getting stranger very quickly, exponentially. I certainly agree with that. Everything is speeding up. All right, let's see what we can reply. First time caller line, you are on the air. Where are you, sir? I'm in the road. Where? I'm sorry. On the road. Back in 64, 66, I figure I was about 18 years old, and we lived on a farm in Gallatin of Salford, utility farmland, and my father and uncle lived in part of the valley. I figured I was 2,000 yards. My somehow, right? And when I was about 18 years old, I was sworn I saw a man with wings. Next morning, my uncle called us. Here's another pig.
would it be 18?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a pretty good could be details, but it's not where the rest of the man I think